In this video, we will discuss Dictionary section GST Act 1999. We will explain dictionary words and their meaning. Please note that these meanings of words explained will only be relevant to GST purposes unless regulations specify any other meanings. Please find disclaimer on screen. If this is your first visit to our channel, we would like to inform you that this video is part of a video series explaining GST Act 1999. Are you interested in learning more about GST Act Australia? Please check our playlist on our YouTube channel for this subject. This is video number 8 of GST series. In this video we will discuss Division 195 from Chapter 6 Volume 2 of GST Act 1999. This section of GST Act is Dictionary of this Act. GST Dictionary have about 383 words in total on April 11, 2023. Word count is subject to change in future. Please find this section in Volume 2 of Chapter 6 of GST Act 1999 from pages 171 to 217. There is link in description box. You can access free copies of GST Act there. We will try to explain all dictionary words in sequence videos. In this video, we will explain dictionary words contained in pages 185 to 191 from Volume 2 of GST Act. We will explain from word enterprise to word GST law of GST Dictionary. We will discuss this video in following order. 1. List of words from GST Act. 2. Explanation of listed words and their meaning. 3. A question and answer activity for you. Let's commence. Please find on screen words from GST Act 1999. We will explain these words in later section of this video. These words are from Division 195 of GST Act. This division is last division of GST Act 1999. On screen are the words from pages 185 to 191 of Volume 2. Please check our last video, that is video number 7 of GST video series. We will read the words as we go through. Please pause to read other related information, or go to GST Act to read the information. Not all the meanings are explained in GST Dictionary. What this means is that other sections of GST Act explain these meanings. We will try to explain these words in later sections of this video. Word number 1. Enterprise. 2. Entertainment. 3. Entity. 4. Essential prerequisite. 5. Estimated annual GST amount. 6. Exceed the financial acquisitions threshold. 7. Excisable goods. 8. Excise duty. 9. Exempt entity. 10. Expense payment benefit. Next page. Page 186, word number. 11. Explanatory section. 12. Family member. 13. Farming business. 14. FBT year. 15. Finance minister. 16. Financial acquisition. 17. Financial supply. 18. Financial year. 19. First aid or life-saving course. Next page. Page 187, word number. 20. Floating home. 21. Food. 22. Foreign law. 23. Foreign minister. 24. Formation. 25. Freight container. 26. Fringe benefit. Next page. Page 188. Word number. 27. Fringe benefits tax. 28. Fundraising event. 29. Futures exchange. 30. Gambling event. 31. Gambling supply. 32. General interest charge. 33. Gift deductible entity. 34. Gift deductible purpose. 35. Global GST amount. Next page. Page 189. Word number. 36. Goods. 37. Government entity. 38. Government-related entity. 39. Government school. 40. Group liability. 41. GST. Next page. Page 190, word number. Word number. 42. GST benefit. 43. GST branch. 44. GST branch registration number. 45. GST disadvantage. 46. GST exclusive market value. 47. GST exclusive value. Next and last page for this video. Page number 191, word number. 48. GST free. 49. GST group. 50. GST inclusive market value. 51. GST installment. 52. GST installment payer. 53. GST installment quarter. 54. GST installment shortfall. 55. GST joint venture. 56. GST law. Is from pages 185 to 191 of Volume 2 of GST Act. We will try to explain mentioned words in this video in best possible manner. We would appreciate your feedback. We will have 7 sections for this video, 1 section for each page of GST dictionary mentioned in this video. Section 1. We will explain these words on screen in Section 1 of this video. You can find these words on page 185 and Division 195 of GST Act Volume 2. We will discuss these words from GST Dictionary. 1. Enterprise. 2. Entertainment. 3. Entity. 4. Essential prerequisite. 5. Estimated annual GST amount. 6. Exceed the financial acquisitions threshold. 7. Excisable goods. 8. Excise duty. 9. Exempt entity. 10. Expense payment benefit. Firstly, we will look at meaning of word, enterprise. Enterprise has the meaning given by Section 9 to 20. You can find Section 9 to 20 on page number 15 of Volume 1. 1. An enterprise is an activity, or series of activities done A. In the form of a business, or B. In the form of an adventure or concern in the nature of trade, or C. On a regular or continuous basis, in the form of a lease, license or other grant of an interest in property, or D. By the trustee of a fund that is covered by, or by an authority or institution that is covered by, Subdivision 30B of the ITAA 1997 and to which deductible gifts can be made, or D. By a trustee of a complying superannuation fund or, if there is no trustee of the fund, by a person who manages the fund, or E. By a charity, or G. By the Commonwealth, a state or a territory, or by a body corporate, or corporation sole, established for a public purpose by or under a law of the Commonwealth, a state or a territory, or H. By a trustee of a fund covered by Item 2 of the table in Section 30 to 15 of the ITAA 1997 or of a fund that would be covered by that item if it had an ABN. 2. However, enterprise does not include an activity, or series of activities done A. By a person as an employee or in connection with earning withholding payments covered by subsection 4, unless the activity or series is done in supplying services as the holder of an office that the person has accepted in the course of or in connection with an activity or series of activities of a kind mentioned in subsection 1. Or note, acts done as mentioned in paragraph A will still form part of the activities of the enterprise to which the person provides work or services. B. As a private recreational pursuit or hobby, or C. By an individual, other than a trustee of a charitable fund, or of a fund covered by Item 2 of the table in Section 30 to 15 of the ITAA 1997 or of a fund that would be covered by that item if it had an ABN, or a partnership, all or most of the members of which are individuals, without a reasonable expectation of profit or gain, or D. As a member of a local governing body established by or under a state law or territory law, except a local governing body to which paragraph 12-45, 1e, in Schedule 1 to the Taxation Administration Act 1953 applies. 3. For the avoidance of doubt, the fact that activities of an entity are limited to making supplies to members of the entity does not prevent those activities. A. Being in the form of a business within the meaning of paragraph 1a, or b. Being in the form of an adventure or concern in the nature of trade within the meaning of paragraph 1b. 4. This subsection covers a withholding payment covered by any of the provisions in Schedule 1 to the Taxation Administration Act 1953 listed in the table. Word number 2. Entertainment has the meaning given by Section 32 to 10 of the ITAA 1997, which states, meaning of entertainment. 1. Entertainment means a. Entertainment by way of food, drink or recreation, or b. Accommodation or travel to do with providing entertainment by way of food, drink, or recreation. 2. You are taken to provide entertainment even if business discussions or transactions occur. Note, these are some examples of what is entertainment. Business lunches. Social functions. These are some examples of what is not entertainment. Meals on business travel overnight. Theater attendance by a critic. A restaurant meal of a food writer. Word number 3. Entity has the meaning given by Section 184 to 1. You can find this on page number 156 of Volume 2. 1. Entity means any of the following. A. An individual. B. A body corporate. C. A corporation sole. D. A body politic. E. A partnership. F. Any other unincorporated association or body of persons. G. A trust. H. A superannuation fund. Note, the term entity is used in a number of different but related senses. It covers all kinds of legal persons. It also covers groups of legal persons, and other things that in practice are treated as having a separate identity in the same way as a legal person does. 1a paragraph 1f does not include a non-entity joint venture. 2. The trustee of a trust or of a superannuation fund is taken to be an entity consisting of the person who is the trustee, or the persons who are the trustees, at any given time. Note 1. This is because a right or obligation cannot be conferred or imposed on an entity that is not a legal person. Note 2. The entity that is the trustee of a trust or fund does not change merely because of a change in the person who is the trustee of the trust or fund, or persons who are the trustees of the trust or fund. 3. A legal person can have a number of different capacities in which the person does things. In each of those capacities, the person is taken to be a different entity. Example, in addition to his or her personal capacity, an individual may be sole trustee of one or more trusts, and one of a number of trustees of a further trust. In his or her personal capacity, he or she is one entity. As trustee of each trust, he or she is a different entity. The trustees of the further trust are a different entity again, of which the individual is a member. 4. If a provision refers to an entity of a particular kind, it refers to the entity in its capacity as that kind of entity, not to that entity in any other capacity. Example, a provision that refers to a company does not cover a company in a capacity as trustee, unless it also refers to a trustee. Note, for GST purposes, non-profit subentities are treated as entities, see Division 63, and government entities can be treated as entities, see Division 149. Word number 4. Essential prerequisite. A qualification is an essential prerequisite in relation to the entry to, or the commencement of the practice of, a particular profession or trade if the qualification is imposed. A. By or under an industrial instrument, or b. If there is no industrial instrument for that profession or trade but there is a professional or trade association that has uniform national requirements relating to the entry to, or the commencement of the practice of, the profession or trade concerned by that association, or c. If either paragraph A nor B applies but there is a professional or trade association in a state or territory that has requirements relating to the entry to, or the commencement of the practice of, the profession or trade concerned by that association. Word number 5. Estimated annual GST amount has the meaning given by section 162 to 140. You can find this on page 122 of volume 2. Varied installment amounts. 1. You may, by notifying the commissioner in the approved form, substitute another amount for A. Your notified installment amount for a GST installment quarter, or B. If paragraph 162-133b applies to a GST installment quarter, your GST installment for the preceding GST installment quarter. The amount substituted is your varied installment amount for the GST installment quarter. 2. The amount substituted must not be less than 0. 3. You must give the notice to the commissioner on or before the day on which the GST installment for the GST installment quarter is due. 4. You must include in the notice an estimate of your annual GST liability relating to the installment tax period in question. This estimate is your estimated annual GST amount relating to the GST installment quarter. Note 1. You may be liable to penalty under subdivision 162D if your variation of the notified installment amount is too much of an underestimate of your total GST liability. Note 2. Your estimated annual GST amount is taken to be 0 if it would otherwise be less than 0. See subsection 6. 5. However, if paragraph 162-133b applies to a GST installment quarter but you do not, under subsection 1 of this section, substitute another amount by notifying the commissioner in the approved form. A. Your varied installment amount for the GST installment quarter is 25% of your estimated annual GST amount relating to the preceding GST installment quarter. And B. Your estimated annual GST amount relating to the GST installment quarter is your estimated annual GST amount relating to the preceding GST installment quarter. 6. Your estimated annual GST amount relating to the GST installment quarter is 0 if, apart from this subsection, this estimate would be less than 0. Word number 6. Exceed the financial acquisitions threshold has the meaning given by Division 189. You can find this on page number 168 of Volume 2. Please check our video number on playlist. We have explained financial acquisitions threshold in detail. So, video number 5, namely, GST Law Australia, Exceeding Financial Acquisition Threshold and 90% Owned Groups, Video Point 5, Chapter 6-2. Word number 7. Excisable goods has the meaning given by subsection 4.1 of the Excise Act 1901. Excisable goods means goods in respect of which excise duty is imposed by the Parliament, and includes goods the subject of an excise tariff or excise tariff alteration proposed in the Parliament. Word number 8. Excise duty means any duty of excise imposed by that name under a law of the Commonwealth. Word number 9. Exempt entity has the meaning given by section 995 to 1 of the ITAA 1997. Exempt entity means A. An entity all of whose ordinary income and statutory income is exempt from income tax because of this act or because of another Commonwealth law, no matter what kind of ordinary income or statutory income the entity might have, or B. An untaxable Commonwealth entity. Note, see section 11-5 for a list of entities of the kind referred to in paragraph A. Word number 10. Expense payment benefit means a fringe benefit that is a benefit of a kind referred to in section 20 of the Fringe Benefits Tax Assessment Act 1986. That was it for page number 185. This was first section of this video. Now we will head to section 2. Now we will explain words on page number 186 of Division 195 of GST Act Volume 2. This will be section 2 of this video for dictionary. Please find words on screen. 11. Explanatory section. 12. Family member. 13. Farming business. 14. FBT year. 15. Finance minister. 16. Financial acquisition. 17. Financial supply. 18. Financial year. 19. First aid or life-saving course. Word number 12. Explanatory section has the meaning given by section 182-10. You can find this on page 154 of volume. There is whole video on this subject we have made. Please find video number 2 on GST playlist of our channel. You can also search by this name on our channel, that is, GST Law Australia, Chapter 6, Part 6 to 1, Rules for Interpreting this Act, explained video 2 of series. This video explain in detail about GST Act. Word number 13. Family member has the meaning given by subsection 48-15-2. You can find this on page number 168 of volume 1. Subsection 48-15-2 states that a person is a family member of an individual if the individual's family, within the meaning of section 272-95 of Schedule 2F to the ETA 1936, includes that person. There are no family members of an entity that is not an individual. Friends, section 272-95 of Schedule 2F to the ITAA 1936 states: Family. 1. The family of an individual, the test individual, consists of the test individual and all of the following, if applicable. A. Any parent, grandparent, brother or sister of the test individual or the test individual's spouse. B. Any nephew, niece or child of the test individual or the test individual's spouse. C. Any lineal descendant of a nephew, niece or child referred to in paragraph B. D. The spouse of the test individual or of anyone who is a member of the test individual's family because of paragraphs A, B, and C. Note 1. Child, parent and spouse are defined in subsection 6.1. Note 2. Section 962.55 may be relevant to determining relationships for the purposes of paragraph 1a. 2. A person does not cease to be a family member merely because of the death of any other family member. 3. In this section, an adopted child, stepchild or ex-nuptial child of a person is taken to be a lineal descendant of that person for the purposes of determining the lineal descendants of that person or any other person. Note: a person who is no longer a member of an individual's family under this section may still be a member of the individual's family group under subsection 272-90, 2a. Word number 14. Farming business has the meaning given by subsection 38-475, 2. You can find this section on page number 144 of volume 1, which states: 2. An entity carries on a farming business if it carries on a business of A. Cultivating or propagating plants, fungi or their products or parts, including seeds, spores, bulbs and similar things, in any physical environment, or B. Maintaining animals for the purpose of selling them or their bodily produce, including natural increase, or C. Manufacturing dairy produce from raw material that the entity produced, or D. Planting or tending trees in a plantation or forest that are intended to be felled. Word number 15. FBT year means a year beginning on April 1st. Friends, FBT stands for FBT Fringe Benefits Tax. Word number 16. Finance Minister means the minister administering the Public Governance, Performance, and Accountability Act 2013. Word number 17. Financial acquisition has the meaning given by section 189-15. You can find this information on page number 169 of volume 2 of GST Act, which states: meaning of financial acquisition. A financial acquisition is an acquisition that relates to the making of a financial supply, other than a financial supply consisting of a borrowing. Word number 18. Financial supply has the meaning given by the regulations made for the purposes of subsection 40-5(2), which states that 1. A financial supply is input taxed. 2. Financial supply has the meaning given by the regulations. Word number 19. Financial year means a period of 12 months beginning on July 1st. Word 20. First aid or life-saving course means a course of study or instruction that A. Principally involves training individuals in one or more of the following: I. First aid, resuscitation or other similar life-saving skills including personal aquatic survival skills but not including swimming lessons. 2. Surf life-saving. 3. Aeromedical rescue, and B. is provided by an entity. I. that is registered, or otherwise approved, by a state or territory authority that has responsibility for registering, or otherwise approving, entities that provide such courses. Or 2. That is approved to provide such courses by a state or territory body that has responsibility for approving the provision of such courses. Or 3. That uses, as the instructor for the course, a person who holds a training qualification for that course that was issued by OSSWIM Limited, ACN 097-784-122. Or 4. That uses, as the instructor for the course, a person who holds a training qualification for that course that was issued by Surf Life Saving Australia Limited, ACN 003-147-180. Or V. That uses, as the instructor for the course, a person who holds a training qualification for that course that was issued by the Royal Life Saving Society, Australia, ACN 008-594-616. Or 6. That uses, as the instructor for the course, a person who holds a training qualification for that course that is a qualification in life-saving, specified in, or of a kind specified in, the regulations. That was it for page number 186, friends. This was section 2 of this video. Now we will head to section 3. Now, we will explain words on page number 187 of Division 195 of GST Act Volume 2. This is section 3 of this video, for dictionary. Please find words on screen. 20. Floating home. 21. Food. 22. Foreign law. 23. Foreign minister. 24. Formation. 25. Freight container. 26. Fringe benefit. Word number 20. Floating home means a structure that is composed of a floating platform and a building designed to be occupied, regardless of the term of occupation, as a residence that is permanently affixed to the platform but does not include any structure that has means of, or is capable of being readily adapted for, self-propulsion. Word number 21. Food has the meaning given by section 38-4. You can find this on page number 107 of Volume 1. Section 38-4 states, meaning of food. 1. Food means any of these, or any combination of any of these. A. Food for human consumption, whether or not requiring processing or treatment. B. Ingredients for food for human consumption. C. Beverages for human consumption. D. Ingredients for beverages for human consumption. E. Goods to be mixed with or added to food for human consumption, including condiments, spices, seasonings, sweetening agents or flavorings. F. Fats and oils marketed for culinary purposes, but does not include. G. Live animals, other than crustaceans or mollusks. Or G. Unprocessed cow's milk. Or H. Any grain, cereal or sugarcane that has not been subject to any process or treatment resulting in an alteration of its form, nature or condition. Or I. Plants under cultivation that can be consumed, without being subject to further process or treatment, as food for human consumption. 2. Beverage includes water. Word number 22. Foreign law has the meaning given by section 995-1 of the ITAA 1997. Foreign law means a law of a foreign country. Note, foreign country is defined in section 2B of the Act's Interpretation Act 1901. Word number 23. Foreign minister means the minister administering the Diplomatic Privileges and Immunities Act 1967. Word number 24. Formation, in relation to a GST joint venture, means two or more entities becoming participants in the joint venture as mentioned in subsection 51-7(1). Word number 25. Freight container means a container within the meaning of the Customs Convention on Containers, 1972, signed in Geneva on December 2, 1972, as affected by any amendment of the convention that has come into force. Word number 26. Fringe benefit has the meaning given by Section 995 to 1 of the ITAA 1997 but includes a benefit within the meaning of subsection 136(1) of the Fringe Benefits Tax Assessment Act 1986 that is an exempt benefit for the purposes of that Act. Friends, Section 995 to 1 of the ITAA 1997 states, fringe benefit means a fringe benefit as defined by subsection 136(1) of the Fringe Benefits Tax Assessment Act 1986, and b. a benefit that would be a fringe benefit, as defined by subsection 136(1) of that Act, if paragraphs D and E of the definition of employer in that subsection of that Act were omitted. And subsection 136(1) of the Fringe Benefits Tax Assessment Act 1986 states, fringe benefit, in relation to an employee, in relation to the employer of the employee, in relation to a year of tax, means a benefit. A. Provided at any time during the year of tax or b. Provided in respect of the year of tax, being a benefit provided to the employee or to an associate of the employee by c. the employer or d. an associate of the employer, or e. a person in this paragraph referred to as the arranger, other than the employer or an associate of the employer under an arrangement covered by paragraph A of the definition of arrangement between I. the employer or an associate of the employer and 2. the arranger or another person or e. a person other than the employer or an associate of the employer, if the employer or an associate of the employer I. participates in or facilitates the provision or receipt of the benefit, or 2. participates in, facilitates or promotes a scheme or plan involving the provision of the benefit, and the employer or associate knows, or ought reasonably to know, that the employer or associate is doing so in respect of the employment of the employee, but does not include f. a payment of salary or wages or a payment that would be salary or wages if salary or wages included exempt income for the purposes of the Income Tax Assessment Act 1936, or g. a benefit that is an exempt benefit in relation to the year of tax, or h. a benefit constituted by the acquisition of an ESS interest under an employee share scheme, within the meaning of the Income Tax Assessment Act 1997, to which subdivision 83AB or 83AC of that Act applies, or a benefit constituted by the acquisition of money or property by an employee share trust, within the meaning of the Income Tax Assessment Act 1997, or j. a benefit constituted by I. the making of a contribution to a superannuation fund, as defined by the Income Tax Assessment Act 1997, that the person making the contribution had reasonable grounds for believing was a complying superannuation fund, as defined by that Act, for the purpose of making provision for superannuation benefits for the employee, whether or not the benefits are payable to a dependent of the employee if the employee dies before or after becoming entitled to receive the benefits, or 2. the making of a contribution to a foreign superannuation fund, within the meaning of the Income Tax Assessment Act 1997, where a. the contribution is for the purpose of making provision for superannuation benefits for the employee, whether or not the benefits are payable to a dependent of the employee if the employee dies before or after becoming entitled to receive the benefits, and b. the employee is a temporary resident, within the meaning of the Income Tax Assessment Act 1997, when the contribution is made, or 3. the making of a payment of money to an RSA, within the meaning of the Retirement Savings Accounts Act 1997, that is held by the employee, or k. a superannuation benefit, within the meaning of the Income Tax Assessment Act 1997, or l. a payment covered by Section 26AF or 26AFA of the Income Tax Assessment Act 1936, or la. an early retirement scheme payment, within the meaning of the Income Tax Assessment Act 1997, or lb. a genuine redundancy payment, within the meaning of the Income Tax Assessment Act 1997, or LC, an employment termination payment, within the meaning of the Income Tax Assessment Act 1997, or LD, a payment that would be an employment termination payment, within the meaning of the Income Tax Assessment Act 1997, apart from paragraph 82-130(1)(b) of that Act, or any of the following payments, if they would be employment termination payments, within the meaning of the Income Tax Assessment Act 1997, apart from paragraph 82-130(1)(b) and section 82-135 of that Act. I, an unused annual leave payment, within the meaning of that Act. 2. An unused long service leave payment, within the meaning of that Act. 3. A payment covered by subdivision 83D, foreign termination payments, of that Act. 4. A payment covered by paragraph 82-135(g) of that Act. V. A payment of an annuity, or a supplement, covered by section 27H of the Income Tax Assessment Act 1936, or M. Consideration of a capital nature for, or in respect of I. A legally enforceable contract and restraint of trade by a person, or 2. Personal injury to a person, or A payment, within the meaning of subsection 104-255(7) of the Income Tax Assessment Act 1997, of a carried interest of a kind referred to in subsection 104-255(1) of that Act, or MB, a grant or acquisition of such a carried interest, or of an entitlement to such a payment, or N, a payment of an amount that, under any provision of the Income Tax Assessment Act 1936, is deemed to be a dividend paid to the recipient, or P, a payment made, or liability incurred, to a person to the extent that the payment or liability is non-assessable non-exempt income, within the meaning of the Income Tax Assessment Act 1997, of the person because of subsection 26-35(4) of that Act, or Q, a benefit constituted by the conferral of a present entitlement to, or a distribution of, income or capital to the extent that subsection 271-105(1) in Schedule 2F to the Income Tax Assessment Act 1936 would prevent the inclusion of the amount or value of the income or capital in assessable income, assuming that it would otherwise be so included, or R. Anything done in relation to a shareholder in a private company, as those terms are defined in Section 6 of the Income Tax Assessment Act 1936, or an associate of such a shareholder, that causes, or will cause, the private company to be taken under Division 7A of Part 3 of that Act to pay the shareholder or associate a dividend, or S alone, within the meaning of Section 109D of the Income Tax Assessment Act 1936, if I, a dividend is not taken to be paid under that section in relation to the loan, but would be if Section 109N of that Act were disregarded, or 2. An amount is not included, as if it were a dividend, in the assessable income of an entity under Section 109XB of that Act in relation to the loan, but would be if Section 109N of that Act were disregarded. That was it for page number 187, friends. This was Section 3 of this video. Now we will head to Section 4. Now, we will explain words on page number 188 of Division 195 of GST Act Volume 2. This is Section 4 of this video, for dictionary. Please find words on screen. 27. Fringe benefits tax. 28. Fundraising event. 29. Futures exchange. 30. Gambling event. 31. Gambling supply. 32. General interest charge. 33. Gift deductible entity. 34. Gift deductible purpose. 35. Global GST amount. Word number 24. Fringe benefits tax means tax imposed by the Fringe Benefits Tax Act 1986. Word number 25. Fundraising event has the meaning given by Section 40 to 165. You can find this information on page number 157 of Volume 1. This states: Meaning of fundraising event. 1. Any of these is a fundraising event if it is conducted for the purpose of fundraising and it does not form any part of a series or regular run of like or similar events. A fete, ball, gala show, dinner, performance or similar event. B. An event comprising sales of goods if I. Each sale is for a consideration that does not exceed $20 or such other amount as the regulations specify. And 2. Selling such goods is not a normal part of the supplier's business. C. An event that the Commissioner decides on an application by the supplier in writing, to be a fundraising event. Note: refusing an application for a decision under this paragraph is a reviewable GST decision. See Subdivision 110F in Schedule 1 to the Taxation Administration Act 1953. 2. Paragraph 1b does not apply to an event that involves the sale of alcoholic beverages or tobacco products. 3. The Commissioner must not make a decision under paragraph 1c unless satisfied that a. The supplier is not in the business of conducting such events, and b. The proceeds from conducting the event are for the direct benefit of the supplier's charitable or non-profit purposes. 4. The Commissioner may determine, in writing, the frequency with which events may be held without forming any part of a series or regular run of like or similar events for the purposes of subsection 1. Word number 26. Futures exchange means a body corporate in relation to which an approval under Section 1126 of the Corporations Act 2001 is in force, or is taken to be in force because of subsection 1126(3) of that Act. Or b. A body corporate that is recognized as a futures exchange in a foreign country and operates as a futures exchange under the laws of that country. Word number 27. Gambling event has the meaning given by subsection 126-35(2). You can find subsection 126-35(2) on page number 17 of Volume 2, which states: 2. A gambling event is a. The conducting of a lottery or raffle, or similar undertaking, or b. A race, game, or sporting event, or any other event, for which there is an outcome. Word number 28. Gambling supply has the meaning given by subsection 126-35(1). This is also on page number 17 of Volume 2. Subsection 126-35(1) states: 1. A gambling supply is a taxable supply involving a. The supply of a ticket, however described, in a lottery, raffle, or similar undertaking, or b. The acceptance of a bet, however described, relating to the outcome of a gambling event. Word number 29. General interest charge means the charge worked out under Part I of the Taxation Administration Act 1953. Part 2A explains how to work out the general interest charge on an amount. Usually, a person is liable to pay the charge if an amount that the person must pay to the Commissioner is not paid on time. But there are also other circumstances in which a person can be liable. A person is only liable to pay the charge if a provision of an act makes the person liable. Please check link in description box if you would like to learn more. Word number 30. Gift deductible entity. An entity is a gift-deductible entity if gifts or contributions made to it can be deductible under Division 30 of the ITAA 1997. Division 30 of the ITA 1997 sets out the rules governing deductibility of gifts or contributions. Under Item 1 of the table in Section 30 to 15 of the ITAA 1997, a gift of $2 or more made to a fund, authority, or an institution in Australia that is endorsed as a DGR will be deductible. DGRs are not obliged to issue a receipt for gifts received. However, Section 30 to 228 of the ITAA 1997 requires that if a DGR does issue a receipt for a gift described in the relevant item of the table in Section 30 to 15 of the ITAA 1997, the receipt must state the name and ABN of the DGR and the fact that the receipt is for a gift. Therefore, for the company, as a DGR, To be able to issue a receipt in accordance with Section 30 to 228 of the ITAA 1997, the donation as described in the facts must constitute a gift. Word number 31. Gift deductible purpose of an entity means a purpose that is the principal purpose of a. If the entity legally owns a fund for the operation of which the entity is entitled, under subsection 30-125, 2, of the ITAA 1997, to be so endorsed, that fund or b. If the entity includes an authority or institution for the operation of which the entity is entitled, under subsection 30-125, 2, of the ITAA 1997, to be so endorsed, that authority or institution. Word number 32. Global GST amount has the meaning given by sections 126 to 10. 126 to 15 and 126 to 20. You can find this on page number 13, 14 and 20 of Volume 2 of GST Act. Section 126 to 10 states: Global Accounting System for Gambling Supplies. 1. If you are liable for the GST on a gambling supply, your net amount for the tax period to which the GST on the supply is attributable is as follows. Global GST amount plus other GST, input tax credits, where global GST amount is your global GST amount for the tax period. Input tax credits is the sum of all of the input tax credits to which you are entitled on the creditable acquisitions and creditable importations that are attributable to the tax period. Note: any supplies under the global accounting system will not have attracted input tax credits. Other GST is the sum of all of the GST for which you are liable on the taxable supplies that are attributable to the tax period, other than gambling supplies. For the basic rules on what is attributable to a particular period, see Division 29. 2. However, the net amount worked out under subsection 1 for the tax period A may be increased or decreased if you have any adjustments for the tax period, and B may be increased or decreased under subdivision 21A of the Wine Tax Act, and C may be increased or decreased under subdivision 13A of the A New Tax System, Luxury Car Tax, Act 1999. Note 1. See Part 2 to 4 for the basic rules on adjustments. Note 2. Under subdivision 21A of the Wine Tax Act, amounts of wine tax increase the net amount, and amounts of wine tax credits reduce the net amount. Note 3. Under subdivision 13A of the A New Tax System, Luxury Car Tax, Act 1999, amounts of luxury car tax increase the net amount, and luxury car tax adjustments alter the net amount. 2. This section has effect despite section 17 to 5, which is about net amounts. Note: if you are a GST installment payer, your net amount is reduced by GST installments you have paid. See section 162 to 105. Section 126 to 10 states: Global GST amounts. 1. Your global GST amount for a tax period is as follows. Total amount wagered. Total monetary prizes, 1/11. Where total amounts wagered is the sum of the consideration for all of your gambling supplies that are attributable to that tax period. Total monetary prizes is the sum of A. The monetary prizes you are liable to pay, during the tax period, on the outcome of gambling events, whether or not any of those gambling events, or the gambling supplies to which the monetary prizes relate, take place during the tax period, and B. Any amounts of money or digital currency you are liable to pay, during the tax period, under agreements between you and recipients of your gambling supplies, to repay to them a proportion of their losses relating to those supplies, whether or not the supplies take place during the tax period. For the basic rules on what is attributable to a particular period, see Division 29. 2. However, your global GST amount is 0 for any tax period in which total monetary prizes exceeds total amounts wagered. 3. In working out the total monetary prizes for a tax period, disregard any monetary prizes you are liable to pay, during the tax period, that relate to supplies that are GST-free. 4. Your global GST amount for a tax period may be affected by sections 126 to 15 and 126 to 20. Section 126 to 15 states that losses carried forward if, for any tax period, your total monetary prize is referred to in subsection 126 to 10(1) exceed your total amounts wagered referred to in that subsection, the amount of that excess is to be added to your total monetary prizes, referred to in that subsection, for the next tax period. Section 126 to 20 bad debts states 1. You cannot have an adjustment under Division 21 in relation to a gambling supply. 2. If, in a tax period, you write off as bad the whole or part of the consideration for a gambling supply that is due as a debt, but has not been received, the amount written off is to be added to your total monetary prizes, referred to in subsection 126-10(1) for that tax period. 3. However, if, in a tax period, you recover the whole or part of the amount written off, the amount recovered is to be added to your total amounts wagered, referred to in subsection 126-10(1) for that tax period. 4. This section has effect despite sections 21 to 5 and 21 to 10, which are about adjustments for writing off and recovering suppliers' bad debts. That was it for page number 188, friends. This was section 4 of this video. Now we will head to section 5. Now, we will explain words on page number 189 of Division 195 of GST Act Volume 2. This is section 5 of this video, for dictionary. Please find words on screen. 33. Goods. 34. Government entity. 35. Government-related entity. 36. Government school. 37. Group liability. 38. GST. Word number 33. Goods means any form of tangible personal property. Word number 34. Government entity has the meaning given by Section 41 of the A New Tax System, Australian Business Number, Act 1999. Government entity means A. A department or state of the Commonwealth, or B. A department of the Parliament established under the Parliamentary Service Act 1999, or C. An executive agency, or statutory agency, within the meaning of the Public Service Act 1999, or D. A department of state of a state or territory, or E. An organization that I. Is not an entity, and 2. Is either established by the Commonwealth, a state or a territory, whether under a law or not, to carry on an enterprise or established for a public purpose by an Australian law, and 3. Can be separately identified by reference to the nature of the activities carried on through the organization, or the location of the organization. Whether or not the organization is part of a department or branch described in paragraph A, B, C, or D, or of another organization of the kind described in this paragraph. Word 35. Government-related entity is A. A government entity, or B. An entity that would be a government entity but for subparagraph E.I. of the definition of government entity in the A New Tax System, Australian Business Number, Act 1999, or C. A local governing body established by or under a state law or territory law. Word 36. Government school means a school that A. Supplies any of these kinds of education courses. I. Preschool courses. 2. Full-time primary courses. 3. Full-time secondary courses, whether or not the school supplies any other education courses, and B. Is conducted by or on behalf of an Australian government agency, and includes a proposed school that will meet the requirements of paragraphs A and B once it starts operation. Word 37. Group liability of a head company of a consolidated group or a MEC group has the meaning given by paragraph 721-10(1)(a) of the EDA 1997. Word number 38. GST means tax that is payable under the GST law and imposed as goods and services taxed by any of these. A. The A New Tax System, Goods and Services Tax Imposition, General, Act 1999 or B. The A New Tax System, Goods and Services Tax Imposition, Customs, Act 1999 or C. The A New Tax System, Goods and Services Tax Imposition, Excise, Act 1999 or D. The A New Tax System, Goods and Services Tax Imposition, Recipients, General, Act 2005 or E. The A New Tax System, Goods and Services Tax Imposition, Recipients, Customs, Act 2005 or F. The A New Tax System, Goods and Services Tax Imposition, Recipients, Excise, Act 2005. That was it for page number 189. Now we head to Section 6. Now, we will explain words on page number 190 of Division 195 of GST Act Volume 2. This is Section 6 of this video, for dictionary. Please find words on screen. 39. GST Benefit. 40. GST Branch. 41. GST Branch Registration Number. 42. GST Disadvantage. 43. GST Exclusive Market Value. 44. GST Exclusive Value. Word number 39. GST benefit has the meaning given by subsection 165-10(1). You can find this on page number 110 of volume 2. Subsection 165-10(1). 1. If you are not a member of a GST group, your current GST lodgement record is the period immediately preceding the current tax period applying to you, that is covered by tax periods applying to you for which you have given GST returns to the Commissioner. Word number 40. GST branch has the meaning given by section 54-5. You can find this on page number 200 of volume 1. Section 54-5 states that registration of GST branches. 1. The Commissioner must register a branch of a registered entity if A. The registered entity applies in the approved form for registration of the branch, and B. The Commissioner is satisfied that the branch maintains an independent system of accounting and can be separately identified by reference to I. The nature of the activities carried on through the branch, or 2. The location of the branch, and C. The Commissioner is satisfied that the registered entity is carrying on an enterprise through the branch or intends to carry on an enterprise through the branch, from a particular date specified in the application. A branch that is so registered is a GST branch. 2. A branch of a registered entity can be registered as a GST branch without all or any of the other branches of the entity being so registered. 3. However, a branch of a registered entity cannot be registered as a GST branch if the registered entity is a member of a GST group. Note: refusing an application for registration under this section is a reviewable GST decision. See Subdivision 110F in Schedule 1 to the Taxation Administration Act 1953. Word number 41. GST branch registration number of a branch means the branch's GST branch registration number notified under section 54-15. You can find this on page number 201 of volume 1. Section 54-15 states GST branch registration number. If the Commissioner registers a GST branch, the Commissioner must notify the registered entity of the branch's GST branch registration number. Word number 42. GST disadvantage has the meaning given by subsection 165-45(2). You can find this on page 139 of volume 2. Section 165-45(2) states that an entity gets a GST disadvantage from a scheme if A. An amount that is payable by the entity under this act apart from this division is, or could reasonably be expected to be, larger than it would have been apart from the scheme, or a part of the scheme, or B. An amount that is payable to the entity under this act apart from this division is, or could reasonably be expected to be, smaller than it would have been apart from the scheme, or a part of the scheme, or C. All or part of an amount that is payable by the entity under this act apart from this division is, or could reasonably be expected to be, payable earlier than it would have been apart from the scheme, or a part of the scheme. Or D. All or part of an amount that is payable to the entity under this act apart from this division is, or could reasonably expect it to be, payable later than it would have been apart from the scheme, or a part of the scheme. Word number 43. GST exclusive market value, in relation to a supply or acquisition. A. Other than of a luxury car, is 10/11 of the GST inclusive market value of the supply or acquisition, or B. Of a luxury car, is 10/11ths of the GST inclusive market value of the luxury car, excluding any luxury car tax that is, or would be, payable on the supply of that car. Word 44. GST exclusive value. A. In relation to an acquisition. I. Other than of a luxury car, means 10/11 of the price of the supply of the thing being acquired. Or 2. Of a luxury car, means 10/11ths of the price of the supply of the luxury car, excluding any luxury car tax payable on the supply. And B. In relation to an importation that is a taxable importation, means the value of the importation. And C. In relation to an importation that is not a taxable importation, means the amount that would be the value of the importation if it were a taxable importation. That was it for page number 190, friends. This was section 6 of this video. Now we will head to section 6. Now, we will explain words on page number 191 of Division 195 of GST Act Volume 2. This is last section 7 of this video, for dictionary. Please find words on screen. 45. GST free. 46. GST group. 47. GST inclusive market value. 48. GST installment. 49. GST installment payer. 50. GST installment quarter. 51. BGST installment shortfall. 52. GST joint venture. 53. GST law. Word number 45. GST free has the meaning given by subsection 9-30(1) and division 38. You can find these on page 23 and 195 of GST Act Volume 1. Section 9-30 states: supplies that are GST free or input tax GST free. 1. A supply is GST free if A. It is GST free under division 38, or under a provision of another act, or B. It is a supply of a right to receive a supply that would be GST free under paragraph A. Input taxed. 2. A supply is input taxed if A. It is input taxed under division 40 or under a provision of another act, or B. It is a supply of a right to receive a supply that would be input taxed under paragraph A. Note: if a supply is input taxed, there is no entitlement to an input tax credit for the things that are acquired or imported to make the supply. See sections 11-15 and 15-10. Supplies that would be both GST free and input taxed. 3. To the extent that a supply would, apart from this subsection, be both GST free and input taxed. A. The supply is GST free and not input taxed unless the provision under which it is input taxed requires the supplier to have chosen for its supplies of that kind to be input taxed. Or B. The supply is input taxed and not GST free if that provision requires the supplier to have so chosen. Note: subdivisions 40E, school tuck shops and canteens, and 40F, fundraising events conducted by charities etc., require such a choice. Supply of things used solely in connection with making supplies that are input taxed but not financial supplies. 4. A supply is taken to be a supply that is input taxed if it is a supply of anything, other than new residential premises, that you have used solely in connection with your supplies that are input taxed but are not financial supplies. Division 38. We will discuss more about Division 38 in our future videos. To get instant updates, please subscribe to our channel. Division 38 describes various GST-free supplies. Division 38, GST-free supplies. Table of subdivisions. 38A Food. 38B Health. 38C Education. 38D Childcare. 38E Exports and other cross-border supplies. 38F Religious services. 38G Activities of charities, etc. 38I Water and sewerage. 38J Supplies of going concerns. 38K Transport and related matters. 38L Precious metals. 38M Supplies through inwards duty-free shops. 38N Grants of land by governments. 38O Farmland. 38P Cars for use by disabled people. 38Q International Mail. 38R Telecommunication supplies made under arrangements for global roaming in Australia. 38S Eligible emissions units. 38T Inbound intangible consumer supplies. Word number 46. GST group has the meaning given by section 48 to 5. You can find this on page number 163 of GST Act Volume 1. Section 48 to 5 states, formation of GST groups. 1. Two or more entities may form a GST group if a. Each of the entities satisfies the membership requirements of the group and b. Each of the entities agrees in writing to the formation of the group and c. One of those entities notifies the Commissioner, in the approved form, of the formation of the group and d. That entity is nominated, in that notice, to be the representative member of the group, and e. That entity is an Australian resident. A group of entities that is so formed is a GST group. 2. If two or more entities would satisfy the membership requirements for the GST group, the group need not include all those entities. 3. The formation of the GST group takes effect from the start of the day specified in the notice under paragraph 1c, whether that day is before, on or after the day on which the entities decided to form the group. 4. However, if the notice was given to the Commissioner after the day by which the entity nominated to be the representative member of the group is required to give to the Commissioner a GST return for the tax period in which the day specified in the notice occurs, the formation of the GST group takes effect from the start of a. The day specified in the notice, if that day is approved by the Commissioner under section 48 to 71, and b. If paragraph a. does not apply, such other day as the Commissioner approves under that section. Word number 47. GST inclusive market value of a. Consideration in connection with a supply, or b. A thing, or a supply or acquisition of a thing, means the market value of the consideration or thing, without any discount for any amount of GST or luxury car tax payable on the supply. Word number 48. GST installment has the meaning given by subsection 162-71. You can find this on page number 116 of GST Act Volume 2. Section 162-71 states, 1. If you are a GST installment payer, you must, for each installment tax period applying to you, pay to the Commissioner an amount, your GST installment, for each GST installment quarter of the installment tax period. Note 1. GST installments are worked out under subdivision 162C. Note 2. Entities covered by section 162 to 80 only pay GST installments on the last two GST installment quarters. Word number 49. GST installment payer has the meaning given by section 162 to 50. You can find this on page number 114. Section 162 to 50 states, GST installment payers. 1. You are a GST installment payer while an election that you have made under section 162 to 15 has effect. 2. You are a GST installment payer for any financial year for which your election has effect. 3. However, if your election has effect only for part of a financial year, you are a GST installment payer only for that part of that financial year. Word number 50. GST installment quarter has the meaning given by subsections 162-72 and 3. You can find this on page number 116, which states, 2. These are the GST installment quarters for an installment tax period. A. The 3 months ending on September 30th during the period. B. The 3 months ending on December 31st during the period. C. The 3 months ending on March 31st during the period. D. The 3 months ending on June 30th during the period. 3. However, if the installment tax period is only part of a financial year, any 3-month periods referred to in subsection 2 that do not form part of the installment tax period are not GST installment quarters of the installment tax period. Word number 51. GST installment shortfall. For a GST installment quarter in relation to which you are liable to pay a penalty under subdivision 162D means: A. If the penalty is payable under section 162 to 175, the amount worked out under subsection 162-175, or paragraph 162-175, 4c, whichever is applicable, or B. If the penalty is payable under section 162 to 180, the amount worked out under subsection 162-183, or paragraph 162-180, 4c, whichever is applicable, or C. If the penalty is payable under section 162 to 185, the amount worked out under subsection 162-185, 3. Note: the amount of a GST installment shortfall can be reduced under section 162 to 195 or 162 to 200, or both. Word number 52. GST joint venture has the meaning given by section 51-5. That is page number 188 of volume 1. Section 51-5 Formation of GST joint ventures. 1. 2 or more entities may become the participants in a GST joint venture if A. The joint venture is a joint venture for the exploration or exploitation of mineral deposits, or for a purpose specified in the regulations, and B. The joint venture is not a partnership, and D. Each of those entities satisfies the participation requirements for that GST joint venture, and E. Each of those entities agrees in writing to the formation of the joint venture as a GST joint venture, and E. One of those entities, or another entity, is nominated, in that agreement, to be the joint venture operator of the joint venture, and E.B. The nominated joint venture operator notifies the Commissioner, in the approved form, of the formation of the joint venture as a GST joint venture, and F. If the nominated joint venture operator is not a party to the joint venture agreement, the nominated joint venture operator satisfies the requirements of paragraphs 51-10, C, and F. Such a joint venture is a GST joint venture. 2. Not all of the entities that are engaged in, or intend to engage in, the joint venture need to become participants in the GST joint venture. 3. The formation of the GST joint venture takes effect from the start of the day specified in the notice under paragraph 1, EB, whether that day is before, on or after the day on which the entities decided to form the joint venture. 4. However, if the notice was given to the Commissioner after the day by which the entity nominated to be the joint venture operator of the GST joint venture is required to give to the Commissioner a GST return for the tax period in which the day specified in the notice occurs, the formation of the GST joint venture takes effect from the start of A. The day specified in the notice, if that day is approved by the Commissioner under section 51-75 and B. If paragraph A does not apply, such other day as the Commissioner approves under that section. Word number 53. GST law means A. This act, and B. Any act that imposes GST, and C. The new tax system, Goods and Services Tax Transition, Act 1999, and D. The Taxation Administration Act 1953, so far as it relates to any act covered by paragraphs A to C, and E. Any other act, so far as it relates to any act covered by paragraphs A to D, or to so much of that act as is covered, and F. Regulations under any act, so far as they relate to any act covered by paragraphs A to E, or to so much of that act as is covered. That was it for page 191 of Dictionary. This was last section of this video. Now we will head to Question and answer activity. That was it for this video, friends. This is a question and answer activity for you. Answering these questions will improve your understanding of this act. You can use this video or GST Act Volume 2 from pages 185 to 195 to answer these questions. There is a link in description box below. For a free digital copy of question sheet, please feel free to contact us. Question 1. What is enterprise? 2. What is essential prerequisite? 3. What is explanatory section? 4. What is farming business? 5. What is freight container? 6. What is futures exchange? 7. What is government entity? That was it for this video. If you have any questions in relation to this section, please don't hesitate to contact us. Please check out whole playlist about GST on our channel. Thanks for watching. To support us, subscribe to our channel.